Very warm welcome to everyone present in the webinar. We have arranged this webinar for all of you, and we hope that it would be like helpful for you for your career development. We have the speaker with us, um, Mr. Anand Jagdish. He is a software engineer in the PowerMax remote replication team of PowerMax Replication and Cloud Organization at Delhi MC. He is also the secretary of IEEE Computer Society Bangalore chapter and young professional representative for the Bangalore section in the IEEE CS SYP Region 10 India Committee. He is he is in an IEEE for 7 years and a member of ACM and Internet Society. He is an open source advocate and has attended many open source software conferences and meetups. He looks forward to sharing knowledge with students through an initiative called Code Mind, started by a small team of friends and conducts micro learning sessions for students. He is also coordinating the PowerMax University Relations and VMax Innovation Network teams for the PowerMax India COE. Um, Hello, Mr. Anand. Are you there on the other
Yeah,
side?
I'm here. Tell me.
Yeah, so over to you. You can start the session.
Thank you. Thank you, Swati. Thanks for everyone joining today. So today's session is something about Git. So before we just go through the presentation, I would like if someone wants to try things along with me, probably you might want to installs Git. So one easy way on Mac is to go and just run Git minus minus version. So it will show if it is already installed, or it will give you an option to install it. This if you're a Linux user, it's pretty much easier. You can directly go and run apt-get install git hyphen all. It will install all the packages. And if you're on Windows, just like I am right now, because I wanted to present without any hiccups, so I am on Windows. So if you are on Windows, you can go to git-scm.com /downloads and download and install the installer. We'll come back to this later. Uh, but it will be good if you can if you want to try things out when I'm running through commands, or just showing some demo. If you want to try it out right away, you can install Git using any of these options. So probably I'll go back. Yeah, so this session is powered by IEEECS BMSIT, IEEECS Bangalore chapter, and PowerMax University Relations at Delhi MC. And first, let me start with something. How are you people? I know lockdown is kind of tough for everyone, and it's different for different people. For most of the IT professionals, it's just the same. We make more Excel sheets, we attend more conferences, and we just work from home. And most of you people might be cooking something really nice and seeing at home. This is a small comic, just to start it on a lighter note. This is from Corporate Comics. You can follow them on Instagram. They have really nice comics on IT life. One thing I would like to say before we start is lockdown is a good time to learn new skills and master new skills, because it gives you a lot of time than before. Before we go, Swati, my screen is visible, right?
No, I can't see that PPT.
You can't see the PPT? I guess now it should be, yeah, okay, cool. Okay. Sure, someone was saying it was visible. Yeah, thank you. I was just checking because it's visible for everyone. If you are not able to see the presentation or can't hear it, just let me know. Yeah, so going on about me, my name is Anand Jagdish. People call me Anand J, AJ, or whatever it is. And I'm a software engineer at PowerMax Remote Replication team at PowerMax Replication and Cloud at Delhi MC here in Bangalore. We are based out of Mahadevpura. And I'm a Git user. I won't call myself an expert, but still I'm a Git user, and I'm still learning most of the stuff. And I have been a Force enthusiast for quite some time. I've attended a lot of Force meets, and I know people might ask why I'm still using PPTs, because this IEEE template was in PPTX, and I didn't want to lose the features in it, so I just switched to Windows right now. And I'll be doing most of the demo on Windows. That doesn't mean I use Windows all the time. just because I told for those years and then I switched to Windows and show it. You people will be like, what is this guy doing? So this is just because I present from a laptop that has only Windows installed and things like that. I just switching to Windows. So before we begin something deep dive into Git, it's good to know the Git, how Git was there and how it came out and things like that. So just before we go there, probably you can just put that in chat. But most people will be having some documents with just name is a variable. You can put any name. Suppose you have some saying project report. So you'll have a project report, then project report underscore project report, then project report underscore project report underscore one. Then you might have project report underscore new. Then there will be project report underscore new underscore newer. So do you people have these kind of naming conventions for your files? Yeah, I know all of you are muted, probably just, I don't know. Yeah, I'm pretty sure most people will have something similar, similar way of naming their files so that you can recognize different versions that you're doing. Yeah, I think that yes was for my question, or it was for someone's statement saying that you have to shoot your questions in the chat window. Okay, cool. Yeah, so what I was saying is, yeah, thank you. So what I was saying is like you probably will be having this kind of a way of naming your files so that you. Hi, you were saying something? Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, it's okay to unmute, but try to not to add noise because it's going out into a broadcast mode, so everyone will hear. Yeah, so what I was saying is we might probably be having this kind of a naming convention for your files. Even I used to put my files under underscore one, underscore two, underscore three, till I learned about something called Git. So before going there, I'll just run over the basic things of version controlling systems. So everything that you do, like having a version of, suppose you have a file, suppose file, then file underscore one, file underscore two. This is something that I call a file versioning system. So we just name the files differently just to mark the version. So this is not a bad way to do it if it is very less number of files. You have just one file. But think about you have to edit it every day, and at the end of the day, I suppose at the end of the week you'll have 7 files. At the end of the month you'll have close to 30 files. Minus holidays, it will be 20 files probably. But that is like even a large number of files if you consider the number of files you are going to generate over a year or over a period of time. So it's okay to version it that way, but this kind of thought happened when people started coding or generating some good programs and all that. And they had to edit things so that they improve upon the version. But naming it in a way like this, suppose you have a code, maybe merge sort, you will put merge sort, you'll put merge sort underscore one, you'll put merge sort underscore new underscore one. Like that, you'll end up renaming the files. So which is not actually required if you can just track the changes that is happening to the file. So this is the thought that people had when they thought about creating some tool for that. So that's where the version control systems comes into picture. That's where the version control systems, or VCS as they say, will come into picture. So there are different types of version control systems. If you most of this data is taken from Wikipedia because I didn't want to Google and find and things like that. I just go to Wikipedia and find things. There are different types of version control systems. There is a local only system, a client server system, or a distributed system. So for local only system, it means that the entire version control system runs on your local computer. So that means, suppose you have a version control system running on your system, on your computer, that particular computer will track changes for a particular folder or a file that you are giving to the version control system. And examples for them, there are two types. There will be proprietary and free and open source. So free and open source is RCS, which was one example is RCS. There are a few others, which was introduced in 1982. So you can, I mean, it wasn't the internet booming era that it was introduced. So you can see that most of them in this examples will be in that time period. So then the example for proprietary one in a local only version control system is PVCS, which was introduced in 1985. And if you go to a client server model, that means all the central things will be stored in a repository, which is sitting somewhere else. And you will have clients for your versions of it. So what you do is you take out the entire set of files from the server, change it your way, then put it back in the server. So that is how a client server model works. So a great example is CVS, which is a free and open source one, which even my company was using for quite some time. Even 2 years back or something, they were still using it. So CVS was introduced in 1986. It is not the exact version that was introduced in 1986 that we are using now, but we have been using CVS for quite some time. Then an example of a proprietary version is SCM, which was introduced in the 1970s. And there is another type of version control system which is distributed. So distributed, we'll talk about distributed in a while when we go to Git and see its way of getting things. So just to give an example here, the free and open source one is Git, which was introduced in 2005. And a proprietary version is Plastic SCM, which was introduced in 2006. Don't worry about these names. You don't have to remember any of this because we'll be here. And the most common one these days is Git, and most companies, startups, and everyone has moved to Git or GitHub or GitHub Enterprise or GitLab or Git-based systems in general. So probably this is. I was just giving an example. So this was the reason why version control systems were introduced. So all these version control systems, they track the changes in the file rather than keeping different copies of the file. So that is why version control system is important, because if you want to keep a file, you are creating multiple copies. Suppose a file was a 5 GB size, and if you are following the file name based version controlling system, which I talked about earlier in the presentation, what happens is you will create 5 GB, then you will add another 5 GB next time you copy the file and store it, and things like that. But when we store just the changes, it will be 5 GB plus X, which will be a very minimal value, which only tracks the changes that is happening to that file. So that's how most of the version control systems work. Then about the Git story, it was created by the same person who created Linux. I don't know if you people know who created Linux. It's the person on the right top corner. Can anyone name him in the chat? Yeah, I don't give any prices. I don't know if Swati or Pranav can give, but I don't have any budget as of now. But you can just, if you know this person, you can just mention him in the chat. Mention his note with mention, just his name. Yeah, correct. Debak Singh, thank you. His name is Linux Torvalds. Aditya, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, good. Thank you. His name is Linus Torvalds, and he created Linux. He's the same person who created Git. And the name Git, he named it because it means unpleasant person. And he named it, and he also expanded it, saying that Git is nothing but a stupid content tracker. So even the other reasons which he quotes every time when someone asks him why he named it Git is because Git is easily pronounceable, and no other Unix command existed with the same name. So I think that is a fair reason for it, probably. So he introduced Linux. Its first version is 0.99, which was introduced on 11/7/2005. So it was in 2005 he released his first version, and the current version, which is in the market for Git, is 2.26, which was released on 22/3/2020. You might have noticed that is in March, and that is 22nd March. So this is one great thing about free and open source software, or the open source software community, because the way people contribute to it, a new version comes out very often than a proprietary software. That means there will be more bug fixes, and every time they see a bug, someone will write a fix and they submit it. that's why you see such releases happening more and more. And every time some release is happening, it means some major changes there. And the Git design is inspired by Bitkeeper and Monotone. Bitkeeper was the version control system that was used for Linux, the Linux kernel that is owned by Linus Torvalds. And Bitkeeper suddenly became a paid version, and all the developers were thinking about something that should be similar to Bitkeeper, which should have all its essence, but it should still remain free. Because what happened is Bitkeeper's author, he figured out that someone was reverse engineering Bitkeeper and took out the thing to build their own version. I don't want to name the other person who did it, but that made him take out the provision that people can use it for free. So then Linus Torvalds developed Git, which was based on Bitkeeper and another version control system called Monotone. Yeah, so Git is a distributed version control system, and it can support all the common protocols like HTTP, FTP, and SSH. Don't worry about all these things. You can dive deeper into it once you master Git, but before that, let's just let it be. So yeah, that was just the intro part of Git. So just going over so the basic things that I mentioned, don't worry about them. They are just things that I took out of Wikipedia. Even you can get it out of Wikipedia. There is no, I didn't find it and bring it here. So you can just browse on Wikipedia to know more about Git and how it was created and things like that. The stories are there. You can just go and read it. So just going to our session. So let's get. So this is where we the first steps I was mentioning. The first thing is getting Git. So Git is available free of course for you can just install it from net. And for Mac OS, the easiest way is to run git hyphen version. So git hyphen version will show, if Git is there, it will show the version, and if it's not there, it will give an option to install it. And for Linux users, it's apt-get install git hyphen all. I missed the hyphen between apt and git. I'm sorry about that. So apt-get install git hyphen all will install Git on your system. For Windows, the easiest way is to go to git-sem.com/downloads. The good thing about this site, why I recommend it, is because this particular site gives you a bash-like terminal if you want to work on Linux commands as well. So I would suggest creating an SSH key and linking it to your GitHub account and all those things, but let's skip that for this particular session. And the first thing that you need to do is tell Git who you are, because you are going to be a developer, and yeah, you can just go and tell Git who you are. So the way is to give these commands. You can go to the command line and do git space config hyphen global space user.name space. You can put your name in quotes. So that is like, you can put your full name. Say my name is Anand Jagdish, so I can put Anand space Jagdish, or just put Anand. It's your choice how you want to be known to Git. The second thing is, whenever you submit something, it's better for people to contact you. So it's good to put your email address as well. So the second thing you can do was git space config hyphen global space user.email as any email. So just to so these are the first steps that you might want to do. You don't have to set these things, but it's good to do it. Then if you want to see it, you can just go and put it as git space config hyphen global hyphen list. Will print whatever you just told Git. Like, it will say this is the user email and this is the username. So that is the way of putting your name with every commit. So it will automatically yeah, thank you for mentioning that. I had put hyphen even I was wondering. I probably think it is because of PowerPoint, it will convert dashes into single lines. I'm sorry about that. Even the same happened a few places. It is actually minus minus list. Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, so you can just give that, and it will directly give the details that you just entered. So this is the basic Git workflow. We'll go over this in steps. So I don't want to run through this just end to end and then go to. Just give me a second. Yeah. Yeah, the screen is still visible, right? Yeah, thank you. So the basic things is we can track Git over a folder. So the easiest way to do is create a folder as the first step. So I think it is better if we can go over these things while we are doing it. So I'll just switch to my terminal here. So I had already set the my name and email address. So it just shows my username and email address. I had set this just to test if it was working fine, because even this is the first time I'm using Git SCM. I've been using Linux for quite some time, and still I'm getting used to this one. It's just a bash emulator, so I think most of the bash commands work. So I was just trying and playing around with it. So I've set Atom as my editor. So all these things you can set using the same command. You can put core.editor as some file path. It will put that as your code editor and things like that. You can play around with this a lot. You don't have to worry about it. Just don't worry about this much. Just do the first two things. Put your name and your email address, and you are good to go. So I'm currently in a folder. So when you first open it, it will be in your C drive. So you would like to probably navigate using the Linux commands like change directory, cd, and uh, you can move around in around directory. So I'm currently in the directory which I want to. So I'll just start here. Yeah, please. Okay. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. So this is where I'm going to create my Git repository. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm going to create a folder. So I'll just put it as the name to be my sample repo. Okay, I'll just name it something, and I just switch to my sample repo. I'm currently in this repository in this folder. I haven't started Git yet. So whatever I had, I am going to add here. Suppose I'm just going to maybe some file. I just put it as some file.txt, which is just some text file. So I'll just open up Nano. Nano is a text editor. So I'll just put something here and just save and exit. So that file, so if you can see that that file is currently in the folder. So some file.txt is in the folder. Suppose I was going to do a file name based version system, which I mentioned. I'll have to add the same file with a different name, maybe some file underscore 1 or 2. So probably I don't want to do that at all, because this is a small file, but think about the larger files if it's going to be like that. So we are going to use Git on this folder. So the first step is to use Git init. So what Git init does is it just initializes a repo. It creates all the things, all the metadata, whatever is required to manage that particular repository. So Git init is the first command that we generally give on any repo. So I'll just run Git init. So it says initialized empty Git repository in this particular folder. So, and you might have noticed that in the previous terminal windows, I mean, the prompts, it just shows the name of the the particular folder. And now it is showing something called as master. So master is the default branch that is created every time you initialize a repo. Don't worry about branch names right now. We'll just leave it there. So it is now we have initialized Git. So The easiest way to know if we have initialized Git is to run git status. So this will say what is the status, what Git sees of the folder. So Git doesn't know. It's not intelligent to say that okay, probably I want to track this folder. So you have to tell Git that you have to track this folder. That is the time when I gave Git in it. And now the problem is it doesn't know what to track in that folder. That's why it is saying and tracked files. Uh, it says some file.txt, which means Git is not currently tracking, which means it doesn't track the changes that are happening to that particular file. Which means whatever change I'm going to make to some file.txt, it is not going to store the details. It is just going to it's just going to view that okay, this file is there, but it is not going to track the changes. So this is the point of time when we want to tell Git that you want to track these changes. So what the before going there, so probably the thing is that Git stores all the details about a folder that it is tracking, or a directory it is tracking, or a branch it is tracking in a folder called .git. So you can see that there is a folder which is being listed where my mouse pointer is right now. I'm going to select it. It says .git. So there is a folder called .git which stores a lot of details about the Git folder. So what are details? If you ask me, it stores the details of where the current, what is the current change, what is the where from the history, is the logs, and whatever happens to that particular repository is going to be tracked there. So that is a folder that you never want to delete from that particular folder. If you delete that particular folder called .git, it is just as good as uninitializing the repo, which means from that point of time, Git will stop tracking that folder. It doesn't know what it was tracking. So that is where all the status, all those things are going to be stored. Excuse me for a second. Yeah. So that is where it tracks all the details. So now we are going to tell Git to track the file called somefile.txt. So for that, it is a very simple simple thing. So this even tells the Git to track files. It even tells Git to stage that things that you're uh, going to change. So I don't want to talk about staging right now, but there is a process of staging. So never mind. So I'm just going to tell Git that I want to track this file. So that is the time when I give Git add some file.txt. So what happens here is Git will get to know, okay, I have to keep track of this guy because the person who is editing that file has asked me to track this changes. So I'll do git add. Now if I give git status, it will show there are no commits on this branch yet, and changes to be committed is this new file, which is some file.txt. What this means is we have staged these files. So staging is the second step. Okay, let's not go there right now. But we have asked Git to track these changes. So now once you initialize a Git repo, you can add any number of files. You can copy files from other folders into this folder or directory or whatever you want to call it. So you can copy files in here, you can add new files, you can change a file, all those things can happen. And every time you add a new file or you have changed something, you always have to run git add. So what git add or git add does is it tells Git that, okay, this changes. I have changed these files, track them. So what we are going to do next is, so now we have created something called the working directory in the Git workflow. So a working directory is nothing but a folder with on which we have run Git in it. So that is the place where we are going to make changes, and that is the place where Git is going to see and track the changes. So the next thing is we are going to tell Git that, okay, these things we want to track as a change. So that is when we do git add, and it goes to the second phase called the staging area. Yeah, hello. Someone was going to say something? Okay, no mind. So that is when it goes to a place called staging area. It is not a different folder or something. It is just a notation. It just so what happens is it is just I mean, it just means that we are ready to make these things permanent. So we haven't made the changes permanent. We have just asked Git to track them. So once we are really sure that, okay, we want to make this permanent in the local repository, what we are going to do is do a Git commit. So currently we are in the working directory place. So we are in the working directory. We have put a file there and I have run git add. So it moves to the staging area. So git add can be done in two different ways. You can either do git add space file name if you want to track only a specific file. Or if you want to track all the files in there, you just have to give git add dot. So it puts that in the staging area. So what this means is we are ready to make it permanent. We haven't made it permanent yet. So even at this phase or any phase, you can just go back and revert the file or revert the changes. It's not a problem at all. So at this point of time, we have this. We have our files in the staging area. The file that we created, which was somefile.txt, we just have nothing but the word something. So it is now in the staging area, and at this point of time, uh, we it just means that we have made it ready to be perm. Okay, we know, okay, these are the changes or these are the files that need to be made permanent. So so this is more like expression of an interest. So this is when this is just like you are just going to prepare yourself. If you are going to be in a relationship, you just prepare yourself and you will just be like, okay, I'm going to tell this person. I'm going to tell this person. You haven't gone and tell him yet. I mean, told that person, him or her. You have not been there yet, but you are ready to do that. So you are all set. You are all prepared. You have prepared your speech and all and ready. So that is exactly similar to this. You are ready to make it permanent, but we have not gone there yet. So, so just to make it permanent, the thing you have to do is just like how happens in relations, you have to get committed. So that is the time when you do get commit. So you're like, okay, I'm ready to do this change. Let's do it. So that is the time when we give git commit. So git commit has the general format. So just to tell us, if you see anywhere a square bracket, it means that particular portion is optional. And if you see anywhere something in angle bracket, it means that is a variable. So that is the convention I'm going to use across this PPT. So you can note that I'll mention that when we see something similar. So if you see, I've put minus a in square bracket. So this is just in case you want to do two steps in one go. So you have changed some files and you don't want to like explicitly do staging, then do commit. Instead, you can just run git commit minus a minus m, then you can give a message. So I'm sorry, about the messages. So every git commit is supposed to have a message. It just tells git, I mean, a person who is going to read it, what it is. So the easiest message you can give is, this is my change, but don't give that because other people won't understand. So the thing is that all these things are supposed to be short messages, a short description on what change you have just made. So just like I told, you can run git commit minus a minus m, then your message, or you can or you, if you have already staged all the files that you need, you can just go and run git commit minus m and the message. So this is what I'm going to do right now. So probably you are able to see the terminal. So here I have just staged the file. So if you, so yeah, I have run git status above. So it just says there's a new file and it is ready to be committed. So I'm ready to go there and commit it. So what I'm going to do is git commit minus m. Then I'm going to give a short message, maybe added some file dot txt. I'll ask everyone to do a good commit message. So this should be short. And if you want the message to be long, you have to give multi-line of this. So if you have set editor for Git, you just have to run git commit and it will open up the editor. But there also the thing is, if you are giving a message, the first line should be a short message. The second line ideally should be left blank, and then you can give the rest of the message in the third line onwards. So it can be any length. You can put any length of message in there. You can explain what you did for the file. If it's a big change that you're doing, you can mention that entire thing in the message. So for now, you can just do smaller commit messages. So if I hadn't ran the git add some file.txt command, which is staging it, you might probably want to give -a here, or you can just put it as a here. So what it does is it will do the staging part along with the commit. So it stages it first, then commit it. So that is a easy two-step commit into one. So if you're first learning it, it's better to do it in two stages. And if once you become expert, you can just run it. So I'm just going to commit this. So I've just hit enter. So it will tell me where I am. So you can see that one file changed and one insertion happened, and I'm currently at this particular stage. So I've just committed the file. So so if there is a very interesting command which you can do is git log. So what git log does is it will tell you what happened to that particular git repository. So so what you are seeing here is it says a commit which says a big long set of characters, and it is a hash value. So what Git does is for every commit, it computes a hash value and stores it. So that is how Git is going to refer a change that you're going to make. And it says, because I have given my name and my email address, it will say the other name to be Anand Jagadish, and it will give my email address there. And it even stores the date at which it was done. And if you remember, I have given this particular message when I did a commit. So the message was added some file.txt. So that also shows up in the fourth line, I mean fifth line. So so this is how the Git stores each commit. So if I'm going to do more than one commit, it will show that just like this. Suppose there have been a situation where I changed some files. Some more changes were supposed to be put in the same commit, or I wanted to put them all together into one commit. Or suppose I made a mistake while I was giving a commit message. Okay, I'm sorry. Is it clear now? I'll just put my mic around. Is it clear now? Okay, cool. So yeah, so what I was saying is, suppose there are cases like that where you might want to add a few changes to the same commit, or you want to edit the commit message. So probably I'll answer all the questions towards the end. So I think that is the easiest thing. So keep posting on the chat window. I'll come back to all of the questions. So so if I want to change that set of, suppose I have a set of, I mean, I want to change the message, or I want to add a set of commits. Yeah, thank you. So you can, the easiest thing to do was run this command, git commit -- amend. So if you have not staged any more changes, it will directly let you edit the. Okay, so it will open up editor window. Hopefully. Yeah, I'm sorry, it came up on the other screen and I didn't check there. Yeah. I think probably, yeah. So yeah, I prefer Atom for no reason at all. Oops. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Oops. Yeah, that was a mistake from my end. So I'm just going to run commit amend again. Yeah, I should have given some easier editors. Yeah. So Atom is, I have set that core editor to be Atom, so it opens up in Atom. So it should ideally open up. Yeah, it should ideally open up. Yeah, I think. Oops. Okay, cool. Yeah, it just opened up the same thing that I edited, and it has the commit message which I gave, and it even shows the changes that I'm committing. So this same type of window opens up if you are just giving git commit instead of git commit minus some the message, because you have to give the message. So here, when you just like I mentioned, the first line will be the comment short which you are trying to give. You have to leave the second line blank, and you can give it from the third line onwards. So whatever is with hash, it will ignore that when you save and close it. So I'll just save. I'll just change this added. I'm just changing it for, I'll just do save close. So yeah, so it just changed what it just amended whatever I just did. You might have noticed that the commit number itself changed, and it just changed whatever message I gave. So this is an interesting thing to remember. So if you have made a few more changes to the same set of files, and you don't want to make it to be another commit, and you just want to piggyback on the last commit that happened, you can always give this command. But it's always advisable to keep things that are entirely different in different commits, because it's easy to track. So moving forward, so there is a variable which is called head, which tracks the changes. Just consider it to be a pointer right now. If you want to read more about head, you can go online and read about it. It's very interesting things how Git uses a few default names for a few things. So head is just consider it to be a variable which stores the current commit. So it just points to the current commit, and it just holds the current commit number. So that is the easiest way to remember it. So head is currently at this commit. So just going back to the presentation, now if you see, I have committed, which means I have, just like I mentioned in the example, you have gone there, you have taken the courage, and you went there and told that person that you like her or him. So that is the same thing that you do with Git. You are saying, okay, I'm ready to get committed. You were at the staging area, then you committed. Now you're at the local repo. So whatever changes you have made is now permanent in the local repo. It doesn't mean you can't go back. You can go back, but just it's just a way of notating it. So now these changes are permanent, which means now whatever changes you are going to make to the working directory again have to follow the same procedure. You have to add that files to the staging area, then you have to commit it to make it permanent. For the last portion, probably we need some more time. So don't think about the remote repo part right now. So whatever we have just done is still the local repo. So local repo means it is residing in your local machine, and whatever changes you have made is tracked by the .git folder within the folder in which you have initialized the Git repository. So moving forward, so just before we go over the remote repository, why is it actually required? So suppose a case where multiple people are working on it, or suppose a thing. So whatever you did is currently on the local space. The changes are being tracked, that is fine. But suppose a case where you lose the computer entirely or accidentally delete that entire folder. Now you're back to ground zero. You have lost all the changes that you have done. This might have happened to you several times when you had put a few files in a folder and you just go ahead and accidentally delete the folder. Uh, these are common mistakes. This can happen. Accidents can happen. That is fine. So what is the way around getting around this thing? So the easiest way to go around this is to create a remote repository. So remote repository is nothing like a big server track or anything. You can even have something locally which you can set up, but we are not going there. So the easiest thing to do is create a repository on GitHub and link it to your local repository. So probably while doing it, we can think about it. So remote repositories can be of different ways. So depending on the requirement, you will be putting it in different in different ways. So it can be on-premise. So on-premise is when some company don't want to put things on a common hosted space or anything, or they just want to just keep it in their buildings, their local systems, their local server rooms and all. So it can be on-prem, or you can buy enterprise Git subscriptions, Git service providers, or you can host your own Git server elsewhere, maybe in the cloud. But cloud is not the exact thing that people are going around right now. But you can put it on premise or away from your current. It just means that it is something different from your local repository. It is put somewhere else, and that is one place where you can go and fetch things if something goes wrong with your local repository. So another way that which is easier for people like us who don't have enough money to buy a server and keep it is to use services like GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket. There are so many of them. There are so many Git service providers, but the prominent ones are GitHub, GitLab, and Bitbucket. You can so I'm going to use GitHub in all the examples because it's easy to configure and use. Also I would also say GitLab and Bitbucket. Depending on your use case, whichever you find easier, you can use that. So the one on the bottom is a GitLab logo. So the first step is to go and create an account on GitHub. I have already done that. I have an account. I have been using. I have multiple accounts actually, depending on the use case. I've kept multiple accounts. So this is one place where you can go and create the account. Is github.com/join. It will open up a window. You have to create. You have to give a name, email address. You have to create a username. Then you have to create the account, and you have to verify the email. So that is a multi-step process, which might consume more time. So I'm skipping that for now. You can do that by yourself and let me know if you face an issue. So once you have created an account, you need to create a new repository there. So you can just create a public repository, but make sure you don't go ahead and create a README or a git ignore there, because that the problem with that is you might have to do extra steps before you can link it to the. It's easy to keep it clean. So just create the repository. Don't add README or anything. Just uncheck all that options if it is already checked. Just create a plain repository. Don't do anything. So once the repository is created, so I'll just do that part right now. So I'm sorry, I think I messed up with Windows. Yeah, so this is the GitHub interface. So you will land up in a home page like this. Okay, this doesn't, it's loading. Yeah, so this is the place where you land. So from there, you can easily select one of the repositories on the side. So if you are on this home page, the easiest way to do is the new one here. There is a button called new. It will create a new repository. Or you can just go to your profile and select the repositories tab, where there will be same new button. So depending on wherever you are, you can select this button. So when you hit new, it will create a new repository. So I just have to give a name here. I'm just giving it the same name as I have put there. And if you have a repository already in your GitHub account with the same name, it won't let you create a new repository. So you can just give a description. I'm skipping that for now. You can put a nice description saying, okay, this is my project repo, or this is my some repo. So you can select the public one. Private one is also there. We are not doing anything very secretive. If you're doing it, select private. Otherwise, just click on public. So skip this step if you are importing an existing repository. So this is where you have to uncheck this. If it's already checked, just uncheck. This needs to be unchecked. And you have to skip, don't add anything here or add anything here. Just create a repository. So it will create a repository in the remote. That means in my remote GitHub account. And now that particular repository is created, and you can do a lot of management tasks here, and you can set things and do all those things. So what I'm going to do right now is just copying this particular link here. I'm just going to copy this link, just hitting on this button, which just copies the particular the link that you see here, HTTPS thing. And what I'm going to do is going back to, oops. Yeah, so that URL which you just saw, you are just going to copy it. I just copied the URL. So what I'm going to do right now is adding that particular remote repository to my particular, the local one. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm here. I'm currently in the repository. So if you see Git status, it says I'm on this branch. I'm on branch master, and I don't have anything to commit, and my working tree is clean, which means I have not edited anything right now. So what I'm going to do is git remote add origin. So I have to stop here for a second. So origin means the remote repository from wherever you are going to pull this from. So whenever you see origin somewhere, just to keep it simple, just think that it is coming from the remote repository. So I have just put origin. Now I'm just going to paste the URL from the URL of the remote repository, which I just copied from the website. So I've just added that repository to be the remote of my current repository. So just to verify I've set everything properly, I'm just going to give git remote -v. So it will say I have my current repository set, the remote to be set as this particular link right here, and the origin. There are two listed. One is for fetch and other for push. We'll discuss fetch and push in a moment. So what we are going to do right now is going to put this data on the remote. So push is nothing but you are going to uh, just going to put whatever changes you have in your local repository into the remote repository which you just added. So if you were you might have noticed that I was on this particular repository right here, and it is just a plain repository. It doesn't have anything. It says get started by creating a new file or upload an existing file. So this is just a plain repository. So the same thing. So now I'm going to put all the things that I added in my local repository, which was this last commit, into the remote repository. So for that, I just have to do git. If someone wants to try it along with me, it is git push origin and just give the branch name. So git push origin, and my branch name right now is master, which is the default one. I haven't changed it. So I'm just going to push it. So this might take a second, depending on if you have logged into Git recently or not. If you have not recently logged in, it will give you a pop-up saying log into GitHub, and it will show you a login tab. I have logged in recently, so whatever username and password you gave while creating the here should be put in the window which pops up. So if you just observe, it just says enumerating objects. So there were 3 objects, and don't worry about the number of objects. And also what it does is it says this is a new Git branch that you're going to do, and it is pushing master to master. So I just have to reload the repository. I just hit reload button on Control R. So you can see that, oops, yeah. So you can see that it used to be a plain repository, and now it is that particular file has moved here. So if you want to see the contents, just click on the file. It will say something, which was the data I just gave there. So successfully we have put our changes into the remote repository. So even if I delete the particular set of files here, I can even always fetch it from the remote and use it. So that we can do. I mean, let's just go over the thing. So what we just did is we were just here. We just created a file. We added it. We moved to the staging area. Now we were on the staging area. We did a git commit. We were in the local repository. So everything was permanent in the local repository, but we never had a remote copy. So what we just did by the push is we just moved here. So we just moved the remote repository, moved to the remote repository. So now we are here, which means it's on the server. So this is where we are right now. So we have already pushed the changes. So yeah, so our changes are there on the remote repository. So now a question can arise, that can we do it the other way around? Suppose I have can I create a repository on the remote and just check out that on my local system? So even yeah, that is also possible. So the way to do it is just go here. Probably I hope I have a repository. Some random repository. If I have, I can just show you people. Yeah, I'll just take this one for example, my sample repo one, which I created yesterday. So it just has a README file saying my sample repo, and this is the repo. So it's just some random data. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clone this particular repository into local. So the way to do it is, so when you're on the repository, there is a clone or download option. The same link will show up, and you can just have to copy it. So this is copy. So I just copied, and now I just have to go here. So now I'm in some particular folder. So I'm just going back because I don't want to mess up. I mean, I don't want to put that in the same folder. So I'll just go back a folder and create a folder, maybe some my sample. Repo, maybe one here. And the command to run it, so if someone wants to do it along with me, is git clone the link you copied and where you want to put it. So it is just git clone. I'm just going to paste the link which I copied, which is my sample repo one.git. And I'm just going to mention the folder to be my sample repo. So you can see that it started cloning. So what it happens is from the remote, it fetches all the things and put it down here in my folder. So I'll just change to the folder sample repo one. Okay. Okay. I understand. So I just forgot to type one next to my folder name. I'm sorry about that. So it just created another folder and put everything in there. So it is now in my sample repo. So the README files. I'm sorry about that. So I whatever README file I had put in the remote repository is now in my local. So if I just want to see the file, I'll just open it up. So it just says hash my sample repo Anand Jagdish / my sample repo. This is the exact same data that is there inside this file. So the README files will automatically get displayed next to your repo. That's why that particular data is here. So this is the exact same data that you see there. So why the hash is because in a format called Markdown, hash means the first level heading. So this is the first level heading. My sample repo is the first level heading, and whatever data I had put, it is coming here. So that is the exact same thing that you are seeing here. So my sample repo, the name, which is in bold, is starting with hash, and the next data is there. So I'm just going to quit it. So now I have the changes. So if I want to put these things again on the so if you are if you're cloning a repository, the same command git remote -v will list the particular thing without setting it, because you have cloned it from the remote. So if I want to change readme.md, I just have to change it, then do the same set of steps. I have to do git add, git commit, and git push. So it will put those changes back in the remote. So that is how you check out a branch from the remote. So this is the reverse process of what I mentioned in the first place. So this is what we want to do. So we put everything in working directory, put it into staging area, commit it into local repository, and then push it to the remote. So these are the steps we just did. So this is interesting, right? I mean, if someone else is also working on the project and they are also putting these things, they are pushing the same changes into the remote. That means you have other changes also to work, right? So what if multiple people are working on a project, or you have more than two people working on a project? Obviously, your academic projects will be like that. So I mean, all the requirements never end. So it's you just need to learn a few spells. The spell is ASIO. I don't know if you people know Harry Potter spell ASIO, which where you bring things. It is a summoning spell. So the same thing you have to do. No, I was just joking. So the thing is, you just have to learn a few commands. The command is fetch and merge. So just like I mentioned, whatever I put in square brackets, it means it's optional. The easiest, so I can just show you an example. So what I'm going to do here is I have the README currently. So I'm just going to open it and edit it. Just going to edit it. Something else typed. I'm going to, okay, so if I edit it locally, I have to commit and I have to do staging and commit. So if you're editing it on the website, you just have to give a commit message here, say, put something meaningful, and you have to select which personality you want to use. So I'm just going to put my email address. So you can add multiple email addresses to your remote repository, the GitHub account. So I'm directly committing to master. Don't worry about the second option. Branches are kind of next set of topics. So I'm just committing directly to the master branch, which is our current branch. I just hit commit changes. So it put those changes. It just committed those changes to the remote repository. So now the problem is remote has some changes which I don't have locally. So if you remember the file which I opened, it just had the first. It doesn't have something else I typed. So the problem here is if I now try to put something onto the remote repository, it says your repository is not up to date with the remote repository. So what you have to do is get those changes from the remote repository, put it in your current workspace, and just put the changes in the remote repository. So what I'm going to do right now is the command called git fetch. What git fetch does is it brings the changes from the remote to your local workspace. So it says in the remote, it has moved this much and it has fetched those changes. So the thing is, fetch doesn't put those changes in your current working directory. Suppose if I again open the file, it doesn't have the new changes. It is still at wherever I was. So now it has just fetched the changes. Now Git knows, okay, remote has moved and it has changed. And yeah, it has some changes which I don't have locally. So what it is going to do is you can do git merge. So what git merge does is whatever it just brought, whatever changes it just brought, it is going to apply it here. So now if I open nano readme.empty, it will have something else I typed, which I put in the remote repository. So now if you see, you can see that in the place here where my mouse pointer is, it says readme.empty /2, then there is a plus and a minus. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, so readme.empty has, it just mentions the number 2, which means there are 2 changes. And one is a plus and one is a minus, which means there was one addition and one deletion. If you edit any line in a file, Git says, Git tracks as if that particular line was deleted and the new change was the line added. So that way it says there is one file changed and one insertion happened and one deletion happened. So now it has the changes here. So another way to do this is just to do a git pull. So what git pull does is suppose there are now you had to do a git fetch to bring the changes and then do a git merge to apply the changes. This is useful when you just want to bring the changes and you just want to browse the changes. But if you want to apply it directly, you don't have to go to this two-step process. Instead, you can just go ahead and do a git pull. So what git pull does is it just fetches and merge. So those two steps will happen together. Just because I did a git fetch recently and I just merged those changes in, it just says already up to date. But if I had some changes in the remote repository that was not there in my local, it would have applied those changes just like how we did the git merge. And what happens is it just might have created a merge commit. So every time you do a git pull or a git fetch and merge, it creates a merge commit on top of your current commit. So you can see that you have just you just have a new commit that is coming from origin master. So whatever changes were there from the master, it is just applied here now with whatever commit I had put there. So this is additional changes is the comment I gave on the remote repository, and it is now there in my local. So you can see there is a new commit added. So this is how you fetch changes from the remote repository. So now if you every time it's a good practice to fetch changes from the remote repository before you push changes. Otherwise it will give an error, obviously. But it's always a good practice to do that once in a day, fetch changes from the remote repository. It doesn't take much time, just do a git pull. You can see that here I'm doing, I've just put here git pull origin in square brackets. So I can even get changes from a different branch within the same repository. Now we only have one branch here, which is master. But if we had multiple branches, you could have mentioned that branch here. So the step is to do git pull, then mention it as mention the branch name. So origin is optional. Why origin is there is because if you want to get the changes from the remote repository from some different branch and apply it here without checking out the branch locally, which means just getting that branch locally, this is the way. So you have so just as I mentioned, the angle bracket means a variable, so means you have to substitute the branch name there, and square bracket means optional. So only if you want to get changes from the remote, you have to specify origin. So that is the easiest way to get changes from a different branch and putting it in the local branch. So I forgot to explain distributed. I didn't really forget. So you can see that distributed as in you have something in the remote repository. So someone else who is in your project team can check out that particular branch locally by doing a git clone, and they can change it and they can push it. So the thing is, how Git tracks these changes is every user will have an individual copy of the entire repository that is there on the remote. That means you have whatever changes that was made by your partner if you have done a fetch and a merge. So it tracks the changes. If you have done a fetch, it will bring all the changes, and now Git knows the entire thing that is happening in the repo. That means if someone has changed that in the remote repository, someone have changed that in the local, and they have pushed that to the remote, and next time you fetch, you will get the copy of the entire repository that is there in the remote. Why is this good is that if the remote repository gets corrupted by any chance, or someone else's, so it can be a multi-way relation. So suppose the remote repository gets corrupted, one of the good copies that you have locally, one of the person who has it locally can just put this thing there and recover the remote repository. That is a way to get things done. The second way is if one of the participating people just lost their local repository, they can always clone the remote repository. And these are ways of preserving the changes and making sure that it is recoverable in multiple ways. Yeah, so now this is what we just did. We did a fetch and a merge. Or the second way to do it is to do a pull. So whatever is the change, it will get applied on the working directory, and you don't have to commit and save it. It will be put in the remote repository, in the local repository automatically. So this is what we just did. So after the push, if you have more changes to be committed, you can make the changes on the working directory, do a git add to stage it, and do a git commit to put that in the local, then do a git push to put that in the remote. Yeah, so probably this is the time when I speak about branches. Swati, am I running out of time? It's already 7:15. I don't know what is the time we committed to the participants.
It was around 7, but it's okay. You can finish it.
So probably I can skip Git branches for now. You can always read this. So I'll just skip Git branches for now. So I'll just go through a GUI version of the same thing that you can do. There are so many Git clients available out there which are GUI based. So what you can do, I mean, you can do a lot of things. So these are all advanced topics. So I'll just probably skip this for now. So suppose you were making some changes and you just want to get data from the other side and you don't want to commit that changes for the time being. What you can do is do a stash and unstash. That is also those two are big words. I don't want to go over them right now, but probably these are good. There are a few more things that are there. So before me confusing you people so much, I'd like to probably jump into something which is more easy to use. So you can use this particular QR code here to get uh, the Git GUI tool, which I would suggest, which is called Git Kraken, and that is also available in the link I just mentioned on the left side. So you can probably download it. It's a very useful tool. So whatever we did using command lines, you can do it using Git. So I have a pitch slide from their side. So Git Kraken, the common solution. The problem is we always do a lot of work, and the idea is to work smarter and not harder. Once you master Git, most of these things are the things that you generally do. But if someone asks me why you want to learn the commands, is when suppose the GUI didn't work due to some case, or you don't have a system with a GUI enabled, or you just have a putty terminal. What will you do? So these are you. It's good to learn all the Git commands. I'm not saying all the Git commands, all the basic Git commands, because if something goes wrong, you can easily, even if the GUI didn't work, you can always switch. But GUIs are an easy way to get around these things. So this is one GUI I have here, which is called Git Kraken. So you can get a free Git Kraken account as a part of the Git student pack, student developer pack, or directly go to the Git Kraken link, which I have just put here. So this is the shortened version of my referral URL. You can always go to the Git Kraken site and get the GUI client. So I'll just show that one. So here I have the Git Kraken tool. So you'll probably end up in this state when you are using Git Kraken. So you can either start a local repo or you can clone a repo. So if you want to start a local repo, you can just give a name and just say where you want to do it. I have already selected the path a couple of times, so it will come here. You might want to skip these two things and just create a repository. So what it does is it will create a local repository in the same folder. So I was talking about the same folder. So I can show that it is created. So the name I gave was my sample repo 2. So you can see that it just came up here. This is my sample repo 2. So if I want to add, so the first commit is generally the commit by which I created the repo. So that is how it is coming up here. So I have the repo created, and if you see inside the repo, the .git folder is created and it is initialized with the README and all. So I'm not going into the .git folder right now. I have a README here. So I'll probably open it up with some tool and edit it. So I'll probably prefer Notepad++. So I'm going to, so it has my sample repo too. So I'll just add something here, and I am just going to save this file. So this file was created as a README. So the thing is, I just edited the file, and I'm just going to close that window. So I just close that, and now the readme.md file is changed. So you can see that here now now I'm on the local and I'm currently on the branch master, and the head has moved a bit, and it is saying okay, one edit happened. You can see an edit thing here. So I'm just going to move there. So now you can see, okay, this means unstaged files, which means I haven't given git add yet, because I haven't told git to track the change I just made. So I'm going to just stage the file or stage all changes depending on the same command. So it is git add the file name or git add dot. So I'll just stage those files. Now those are in my staging area. you can see now it says the stage files, so I can even unstage the files here. So there is a command for git in git for that. uh, yeah, so I have just staged these changes, so I can even just by clicking it, it will open up the changes that I just made. So it will say this plus symbol here means I have changed this thing, and it says I added this something. So I'm just going to close this. Yeah, I'm just going to commit this. So what you the same thing. So in the commit message, I told you can give a big commit, and the third line onwards, you can give a description for the same commit message. So I'm going to put it as changed readme.md. And I can even give a long description here. I'm just going to commit the changes. So you can see, as soon as I do that, you can see the master just moves upwards. And now my head is currently at changed readme.md, which is my new commit. You can see that it says its parent was this, and its current data and all. You can just see here, and this commit has a hash. So the thing is, Git can even refer to the commit number with the short version of the hash. So you have seen a long string there, so you can even refer to it using the first 6 letters of the hash. So that's why it is saying the commit is this, and its parent commit was this. It is this guy, A46011 will be its parent, which means it was the previous commit. So the thing is, I don't have a remote repository added yet. So the easiest thing to do was there is a tab called remote here, and you can just go and hit on the plus button, and it will ask where to create it. So you can even put the URL and push URL and pull URL here and name it. You can directly add the remote. The thing is, if you have connected your account, your GitHub account into Gitkraken, you can directly go to the GitHub tab, and you can if there is an already existing repository, you can do that, or I can just give it as my sample repo 2. Oh, it's interesting. So I will just see if I have a repository, my sample report 2. I don't think, okay, I don't have it. So I'll just put it here in my sample repo 3. So I just have to create a repository in GitHub, and I just have to come here and give my sample. Uh, oops, somehow it's not showing up. Okay, never mind. So I can even put that link here and do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get the same repository. I'll probably take my sample repo 3, and I'm just going to delete this file here. No, I'm not doing anything. I just deleted the file. So now I have a plain repo. So I'm just going to copy it and going to put that put the pull URL here and the push URL also here, and I'm going to add the remote repository, which means now I have the remote repository here, and now it is syncing. So once this thing syncs, it says I have diverged, which means I have some changes in the remote, which is not there in my local. So I'm just going to do a pull. Oops. Yeah, probably I just messed it up. So this is how you can do it. You can add a remote, and because of time limitations, I'm going to skip this part. You can add a remote if you create a plain repo and add it here. It will come as a remote, and you can directly push to the remote branch. So you can create the branch there, the master branch there, and create things and do things like that. So if you are going to check out a remote repository here, the easiest thing to do is I'm just going to clone a repo. So if you have already logged into GitHub, you just have to select GitHub here, and you just have to go and select the repository you want to clone. So suppose I just want to clone some random repository. Suppose I'm going to clone my sample repo 3. I just have to say where to clone it and hit on clone repo. So what it is going to do is it's going to do the same cloning step here, and going to clone that remote repository here, and you can work on it and push that and all. So this is how the GUI will work, and it kind of helps you skip the commands. And just because I'm running out of time, I'm just going to skip the rest of the demo. So what else can you do? These are just the basic stuff. Now you have to learn about branches and stuff. You can learn about other commands, and you can create something called just on GitHub, which are just sample codes and all. You can create a wiki for your project, or you can create a simple personal website also on your Git repository, and you can even do advanced Git commands. So I'll probably skip that for time being, and we'll directly move to questions because I don't want to. I have already exceeded the time that was given to me. I know. I mean, I just wanted to go in detail for the people who are learning it for the first time. So. So these are the next set of resources you can always go. So kindly send me a feedback on this thing. So probably if the organizers are ready, we can do a follow-up session and run the rest of the Git commands, learn about branches and stuff like that. I also have created a Google Classroom. I haven't populated it anything there yet. So the classroom code is this. So what you have to do is just you need to have a @gmail.com account, because Google have limitations on the domain. So I have created 2 assignments on how to create a GitHub account and a repository, and how to create other things. So I'll just keep on updating that a set of assignments there. So this is the classroom code. What you have to do is uh, just go to this particular Google Classroom. You can go to classrooms.google.com and enter this. You can join the class. There is an option to join the class. You can go click on that link and give this code. So this particular code will let you join the class. So once you have joined it, it will have the assignments to learn, and it will have a chat forum where I'll closely monitoring your questions. So if you have questions on Git and GitHub, you can post it there. I'm not saying I'm an expert in Git, but you can. But I'll try to find things and post it there, and uh, 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 find answers for your queries. So another way to reach me is to mail me. This is my email address, anand.j@iiee.org, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.anandj.xyz. I know the LinkedIn link was so long, so I just shortened it. So the another place where you can look for other resources is codemind.anandj.xyz. So that is the place where I keep most of the sessions I do, and links to the classrooms or training materials or document repositories. So that is there. And if you want to download that particular Git client, you can use this link. So there are pointers to the each QR code, so you can right away do both of the things. So this Git client is for Windows, which I'm going to point. It will have Git clients for Linux and how to install and all those instructions right there. So the Git client is called Git Kraken, and Git Kraken is a very interesting tool that you can use. It has a lot of things. It even lets you create timelines for your projects, and it lets you create glow boards, which are like task boards that you can create. So there are so many facilities associated with Git Kraken, so you can utilize all of them. Yeah, so that is everything I had for this session. If the organizers are ready, we can always have you can always have a follow-up session. So if the organizers are ready. So that is all the things I have. We can directly move to Q&A session. I'm sorry for exceeding the time limit. So before I go to the chat window, if someone wants to directly ask.
Hello.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just got had a connection issue, so I just got thrown out of the meeting. I'm sorry about that. So let me go to the chat window. Where was I? Oops, I think I lost all the chats. Can you just copy paste the chats here?
Yeah, never mind. I'll be asking you that directly.
Yeah, sure,
So,
sure. So I was talking about git ignore. So you can add patterns, file patterns, or specific type of files if you want to remove from Git. So so if you want to remove some specific set of files from Git, you can put those files in the git ignore file. You can either add them directly when you create the repository on GitHub, or when you're creating repository here, you can initialize the file. You can create a file called .gitignore and add your patterns there. It will ignore that files. The easiest way I would suggest is, if you're using it for the first time and you are creating a GitHub repository, add them in the GitHub repository and clone the repository. So it is easier for you to understand. And once you become expert, you can edit the git.gitignore file directly. So that is how you can exclude a specific set of files or folders or specific file patterns, I would say. So file patterns include both folders and files. So that is how you can do that. Yeah, Pranav, does that answer your question? Yeah, thank you. Can we move to the next question? Swati?
yeah, so when you were around the slide 20 to 22, Vishnu Shastri had a doubt that
Okay.
URL is showing not a Git repository, but the repository is existing. So what should I do there?
I didn't understand that. The Git repository?
Is
Sir,
not a Git.
Sir Vishnu Shastri here.
Yeah, sure, tell me.
I had actually created a Git repository, but
Okay.
then when I entered the command in Bash, it was showing fatal error. It's not a Git repository.
Okay, so did you run git init first on the same folder?
Yeah, sir.
Yeah, probably I will have to take a closer look at that. So I don't know what is the set of commands you have run. So if you have run a git init on a folder and you are going to run all the commands in that particular folder or any subfolder of that, then Git will be able to track the changes. So if you are on a different folder or by chance you just moved out of the folder, it might give an error saying it is not a Git repository.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it is just that Git thinks up to that mark. I mean, it just says, when you say Git init on a folder, the parent folder of that doesn't know that there is a Git repository in the child folder. So if you just moved in and out of the folder by any chance, that can be the reason why it is saying it is not a Git repository in the particular folder.
Yes, sir. Because when I gave that git amend command,
Yeah.
then there were some processes going on. So I
Okay.
opened a new folder.
Okay.
So probably
Yeah.
that.
So you have to move to the same folder and do it. So
Okay, okay.
it will work. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Next question. Yeah, Vishnu, you can mute it.
Sir, can we abort any, like there were some processes running? Can we abort them and then continue
You
with?
can just hit Control C. If it goes to an unstable state, you can just recover it using other commands. So that and all is probably, I would take that to be advanced topics. There are so many cases where you can run into issues. So I don't probably the time limit may not allow me to explain all those things. So if you want, you can take post the query on the classroom. If you are interested to join it, I'll answer those things in the forum if you want.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
The
Yeah.
next question was again by Vishnu Shastri asking that
Okay.
what is the difference between GitKraken and GitHub?
So GitHub is a remote hosting service, and GitKraken is a GUI tool that we use for Git. So it's more like whatever you have done through commands, GitKraken just lets you do it through GUI, which is even faster than commands, because most people tend to forget commands. So if you're not too interested in running Linux commands or commands on the command line, it is always good to use the GUI. That's why I suggested the Git GUI tool called GitKraken. And it is very much different from GitHub, because GitHub is a remote hosting service. So it just hosts the remote repository for you on their servers. So that is the difference between Git GUI and GitHub. There are so many different types of Git GUI. GitHub itself provides something called GitHub Desktop if you want to use it, which is a bit more not fluently. I mean, it is not this visually pleasing, but you can use that as a Git GUI tool. There are multiple GUI tools. So just this. This GitHub is the remote hosting service, and Git Kraken is a Git GUI client, which I'm just suggesting. I'm not pushing it that you have to use this only. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. If Likhit is here, I would request him to unmute his mic and ask his question.
Who is there?
Likhit S. He asked that it says protocol HTTPS is not supported. So he has asked that what should I do there?
Yeah, so there is an option for SSH. You can try that also. So there is an you can switch on the, so whatever link you might have copied, it will be default selected to. So I'll just share my screen for, just give me a second. Yeah, I've started screen sharing. Is it visible?
Yeah, now it's visible.
Cool. So what I'm saying is here, it is by default selected to be HTTPS. But if you are you on Linux system? Probably you will be on Linux system. So you might want to try SSH. So you can just so I was on HTTPS here. So when I was taking the link, even when you first create a repo, there are two options on the next to the link, which is HTTPS and SSH. You can always try SSH, because that is a common protocol that is available on all Linux systems. So if HTTPS is not supported, you can always try SSH if SSH is installed on your system. Yeah, that is a workaround that you can try. Were you on a Linux system, Likhit?
Yes, I was on a Linux.
Yeah, you can try SSH. So you can just switch between SSH and HTTP here. So you can, if you're able to see the screen, you can just shift to SSH and copy the link and try it. If the problem still persists, just try to put the question on the forum. I'll try to answer it. Or you can just directly mail to me on anand.j@itriplet.org. I'll take a closer look and advise.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, sure, no issues. Next question.
Thank you, sir. Rubini has asked, could you please share the Git Kraken link in the chat window?
Sure, no issues. I'll just put that there. Oops. Yeah. So it is sl.anandj.xyz/gk.
Yeah, so thanks a lot. It was definitely an interesting and knowledgeable session.
So those are all the questions?
Yeah, that is done. And
yeah, for I just before we go, I just wanted to mention something. So I know many people have I mean, probably been here thinking that I'll cover some advanced sessions. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. I just wanted to start from the basics because many people, I understand that many people were there who wanted to learn it from the basics. So that's why I started from the very basic and came till here. So there are a lot of topics are there. You can just go to the Git documentation, which is available freely on the internet, or you can refer to books and learn it. Or if the organizers are ready and all of you want a session on more topics which I just skipped, like the branches or I mean, the things like stash, unstash, unstage, how to unstage things, how to revert a commit that you just did, how to reset your branch to some particular stage, or just want to learn about branches or things like that. So we can have an advanced session, or you can join the classroom where I'll post a few write-ups on which assignments and things like that, which you can use and learn it. So, or you can directly go to the Git documentation. There are hundreds of sites out there which mentions all these things. So you can do any of these way of learning it. So depending on what your preference is. If everyone is ready, we can have a session on a few more topics on Git. Just like this 1 hour session, we'll cover a few topics. Yeah, that is the things I wanted to mention. So it would be good if all of you people can just go to the link on the top, which is a feedback link for me. You can select the workshop or session and give a feedback. So I know a lot of topics I have skipped. I have just mentioned everything from on a very basic level. There are a lot many topics. You can just give a feedback on what you want to learn or what you want to know more about and things like that. So yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
We got one more question from others.
Sure.
It says sometimes when we add a file of 40 MB,
Okay.
that file is too large. So any solution for that?
Yeah, GitHub generally doesn't let you give larger file sizes. There is something called blobs. GitHub supports blobs, binary large object files. So you can check for that. I think that is a even bigger topic to cover right now. So you can read about it, or you can just drop me a mail. I can send you a link to learn how to do that.
Will you be sharing the Google Classroom link with us so that we can forward it to?
Actually, there is no Google Classroom link as such. You can go to classrooms.google.com and enter the code here, which is 2OACXMK. You can probably mention that in the mail if you are sending a follow-up email.
Vishnu has a doubt that how to submit the assignment on Google Classroom because it would be a repository on GitHub. So should we submit the link?
No, you can create a text file on Notepad, paste the link of the repository, and attach that file, because Google Classrooms let you submit assignments by an attachment. So that way, these attachments are not graded. These are just for your learning purpose. I'm not going to sit and grade every assignment as such, but probably whenever I get time, I'll just go over and see, okay, you have created this. Oh, you are using it. Things like that. And I can just go over that once. So the first, for the next week, I'll keep checking if people have submitted assignments, and I will try to see if you have any questions on the forum. I'm not a certifying authority, so I can't give you certificates. Google Classroom is just a learning platform. I'm not going to give you certificates because I'm not a certifying authority, or I don't have permissions to give certifications. So yeah, so that is Google Classroom. That is about Google Classroom.
Thank you, sir. So at the end, we wanted to have a rapid fire round for
Sure.
you.
Sure.
So that to just make the mood
Yeah,
light.
before going there, any general questions other than Git, because anything general that someone wants to ask, they can go ahead and ask. Yeah, I'll wait for 5 seconds.
Anyone who has any query or general question, kindly unmute your mic and please ask the question.
Or put them in the chat.
Yeah.
As long as my net won't go down, I'll have the chat window. Yeah, I know it is getting late. It's almost 7:45. We exceeded the time by almost 1 hour.
We got one question telling
Okay.
that codes can be stored on GitHub.
Yeah, the codes can be stored on GitHub, but depending on what the app is, the thing is, GitHub supports basic web pages. So if you have an HTML with just PHP on it, that should run. It doesn't have things to run your higher end code or any backend kind of thing. So if you want to host just to put the code there, you can put it there. And if you want to deploy it, whenever you code it, you deploy it and run it, you can use additional stuff like Jenkins to build it or deploy it, and other DevOps tools to continuously build and deploy it. So if you are going to run a web app out of GitHub, I don't think that is now supported. But you can always keep the source code there. You can always keep the source code there and deploy it from there. It doesn't restrict you on that. But if it is some client-based thing, probably you might want to make the repository private, which is advisable because by default, all GitHub repositories might be selected to be public. So if it is some sensitive information, it's better to have your own server for Git, or buy a GitHub Pro account, or go to GitLab, or switch to alternatives. Yeah, if you're interested, I have a website called anandj.xyz, which is hosted entirely on GitHub. Yeah, so web projects out of HTML and CSS, it should work ideally. The website I have, it has JavaScript also, which is on somewhere else, which is run. Like I am using plugins like Maps and all, which has JavaScript elsewhere, like Google's JavaScript. So you can use that also. It should ideally support plain HTML, which doesn't need a backend. So it should ideally support CSS and JavaScript. Yeah. Oh, what is this ISC 2019-23? I don't know. I mean, in your next to your name, is it your branch and batch?
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
branch.
okay. Sure. Yeah, cool. Okay, where did you find that link? I don't know. Yeah, it is just a project. So this is how you host pages on GitHub. I didn't cover that in my PPT, but there is something called GitHub Pages. So GitHub Pages lets you host these HTML files. So if you have a GitHub repository with your username.github.io, that will be the website you will be creating, and you can create sub pages for that using GitHub Pages. So that you can read the documentation, or you can find resources on that. It is very easy to set up. That's how I have hosted my website. So I just created it for fun when I was learning GitHub, just like this. I just created a repository and put the changes there, and just updated that with the files. So that's how I did that website, which is anandj.xyz. Even there, I'm not updating it regularly. It's just I just created it when I learned Git. I'm not constantly updating it. So others is asking, when using GitHub, will we want to pay for the domain? So GitHub ideally gives you a free GitHub domain, which is your username.github.io, which will be created when you enable GitHub Pages on the repository. So other than that, if you want personalized domains, you might want to pay for it, buy a domain, and you can add it either on the Git, or you can create a redirection from the domain provider. So that is the way to ideally do it. So anandj.xyz was bought on GoDaddy, and I just redirected it there. So that's the easy way to do it. So ideally, GitHub pages are there to let you create a project pages if you don't want to pay for a hosting for your simple project. So you can always use that. Then Vishnu has asked, like it is created by one of our seniors, it includes some notes and study materials. Yes, he has done the same thing. He has put everything in the Git repository, and he just enabled GitHub Pages on that repository. So it will create a link out of it. So but ideally, GitHub Pages will give you your username.github.io. It is by default that. And whatever the subdomain that is there, you can even create that. So it will create / something. You can name the sub pages as well. So that's how you do it. So then Nitya has asked, so is github.io used for hosting projects? So if you ask me that way, ideally the concept is that, but you can host any web page. You can put any web page in a repository and make it GitHub pages. So you'll the thing is, you can only create one username.github.io domain. Everything else will be sub pages of that. So you can host multiple projects. So if you want to host a few projects, you can create that into multiple repositories, and you can enable GitHub pages on each repository. But just like the link mentioned by Vishnu Shastri, it is something your username.github.io / your whatever name you give. Yeah, Clubhouse is similar to GitHub. if you ask me, I haven't used Clubhouse much. So I would probably, I haven't used Clubhouse much. You can create projects there also. Frankly speaking, it is similar to GitHub, and I haven't used it. I generally use GitHub, GitLab, or Bitbucket. Those are the three things I generally use. Yeah.